All right, let's make a formal introduction for our listeners. Good afternoon, Robbie. My name is Claudia, and I'm calling you from Washington, D.C. For the studios of Fairfax City. We're very grateful that Robbie Perry accepted our invitation to our show. Robbie, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you very much, Claudia. I'm very happy to be here.
Same here, man. Um, Robbie, let's go back to the beginning in your life. Were you born like in a musical family? I mean, how old were you when you perhaps began taking guitar lesson or piano lesson?
Ah, good question. Very good question. Um, Musical family, yeah. Well, my mother comes from the musical family, really, and it was her father, my grandfather, of course, played fiddle, and he taught his children. Um, and he was quite spectacular. I've heard such wonderful stories. I live in the house, actually. I live in the house that my mother was born in, and her father was born in. So I'm very privileged to have that opportunity. So locally, I'm always picking up stories that people make about my grandfather and what he used to do musically. And by all accounts, he was quite the genius, really, you know.
Wow.
So that's really where those side of things come from. Um, and growing up actually in the house in London, um, there was always music being played, lots of records always being played. So we always had, I think, that in the background. And that was always fun and exciting. And I think, to be honest, like for a lot of people, uh, to have something of a musical background, whether you play an instrument or not, it's
Mm,
just important to actually have a lot of music around.
absolutely.
Even if radio, you just got to be immersed in it because it just shows the love that people have for it and the importance of it in your life. And so we had plenty of that anyway. And growing up, we just all experimented with instruments. None of us really took any formal training at all. Um, I can't remember properly uh, having any formal training. The only formal training I would have had was when I was in school at about 13 years of age, and I had some drum lessons. I think I had some saxophone lessons and a little bit of piano as well. But by that stage, I'd already been messing on these things as you acquire them as you're growing up, really, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and that in itself gives you, I suppose, um, another angle, another creative angle when there's pluses and minuses to having I think having a formal education, discipline, etc., and all that stuff can be really good. But at the same time, you kind of need to go where the sounds in your head are talking to you from, really, you know. And if you're doing grades and all that sort of thing, then it's hard, I think, for some people to do that at an early age. Now, I'm not going against formal musical education whatsoever at all by saying that, but I'm just stating really that I really enjoyed the way I was introduced to music, um, which is really just finding it yourself.
Mm.
Um, so from all of that, I think I had something pretty good, and it's always been a really good friend. And I could never really see myself doing anything else other than anything associated with music, really. And then I found my way at some point. This won't be chronological. I'm rambling here, but I
Sure.
found my way through the enjoyment of playing music to teaching music. And I wouldn't teach that even in a formal way either. Um, and I used to teach children, whether it was drums or guitar, things like that. But probably a lot of the important work I did was really going into schools and working with special needs students. And that's where the whole PhD thing came from, because I would build a lot of instruments and I'd build a lot of stuff out of recycled materials, things that were to hand, really. Um, and I would look at stuff really um, as a piece of sculpture as well. So it wasn't just the physics of what would produce a certain type of sound and therefore make it. but you would look at an object and you'd say, that's absolutely beautiful in its own right. The wheel of a car, the wheel of a bicycle, whatever it may be, a spade for the garden. And then you would think how you could transform that. And those kind of objects, they always give themselves physically to some sort of sonics. So it was easy enough to string them and turn them into electrified instruments. And so I kind of brought those challenges into schools. And the idea was really to break down those kind of barriers of formal training and to show people that exploration. So you're self-learning, really. There aren't really any rules to break at all. There are no rules. You just introduce yourself to something and take it from there, really, you know? So that was kind of important for me. And then I have a love of electronics as well, from when I was an early teenager. And the opportunity to do a PhD then was pretty exciting. So I mixed it with music and autism. So my idea then through electronics really was to create instruments with sensors so that you could remove the physical barrier for people with alternative needs, physical disability, etc., you know? And that meant then that people could not just play by themselves, but they could play as a group and therefore access music. So all of it really at the end of the day was to access music and make it easier for everybody, you know, to play. So that was a life-changing thing for me as well. And yeah, that led to workshops with groups, etc., etc. But music education, now it's storytelling. The funny thing, I work in schools and I mix all the formats and media together then through storytelling, getting children to kind of compose their own characters, invent their own plot lines together as a group. And then that's all put together with special effects and scripted. And then it's like a radio play. And then I usually put that together on an MP3 player that I build. And that's then incorporated into the artwork they produce for the story. So that's another thing I like to do, because nothing's really isolated. Nothing really exists in isolation in the arts. Everything seems to overlap with another thing. Certainly our appreciation for things do anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's that little string of wandering in my storytelling. You can stop me and prompt me to something else.
No, that's good. It's good that you have the love of music and the love of teaching, and you're able to convey that with kids with special needs. I mean, in my family, I think most of us are, you know, I know I have, you know, a little bit of ADHD, autism, Asperger, and I never took any medicine, but music became very important in my life and has given me, without being a musician, so much satisfaction. It's a beautiful thing to, you know, you don't need to be a musician. You buy a record or go to shows or listen to YouTube, whatever, and try to bring music into your life, you know, whether you're a doctor, engineer, a car driver, or, you know, or any profession in between, you know. It's a beautiful thing.
It is indeed. And so, you know, it's not something to be necessarily put on or taken off, turned up or turned down, but it's that thing of expression that's hard to do through other mediums sometimes, you know. So and that's the thing, is making it accessible for people, breaking down the mystery but without destroying the magic.
Absolutely.
You know, and I remember a teacher telling me that through workshop training, actually, a long time ago. It was just one of those things that never leaves you, really, you know, to break down the mystery, because you're teaching, you're learning, but the magic still stays, because it's the magic that keeps us coming back all the time, you know. So
absolutely, yeah.
And I think that goes for anything in life, really, you know. So, but yeah, it's all good. It's all a fantastic journey. It's all
Absolutely, man.
a wonderful song. I think that
Yeah.
we're all intertwined with, you know, we all
Yeah.
have our parts to play in it. So
Absolutely,
yeah,
man. Were you in any band in sort of high school? You were listening to music, I don't know, at the time, maybe, I don't know,
yeah,
people like the Led Zeppelin, the Pink Floyd,
oh
the
yeah,
Genesis of this world and so forth.
cover bands. Yeah, I mean,
Cover.
teen years in Ireland, I was in cover bands. Yeah,
Yeah.
and they were just, you know, cover bands for what was in the charts, really, you know. And so
Yeah.
that's good fun. You've got to have something like that. Never in a band that played solely the music of another band, though, but just in general. And it's also part of the economy as well, and the pub economy or a working musician to actually, you know, make extra money by playing the weekends to
Sure.
people enjoying their merriment and entertain them, you know, as well. But that's funny too. Yeah, that can be a bit of, you know, so many things. A variety is good. But the danger is concentrating in one thing and one thing only. And then you kind of fall to the problems that might exist, you know?
Yeah.
So I kind of tend to avoid, I just can't sit still anyway on a lot of stuff. And if I'm bored, my mind wanders. I'm sure you can
Relate to
follow
that,
that.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
oh,
So, I
absolutely.
mean,
I'm the same, yeah.
you need variety. You need to keep things kind of moving, really, you know? So, but yeah, I did those things. The first thing I ever did, which was quite funny, was when I was about probably 11 or 12 in school in New Zealand. And it was a cover of a song, a Kiss song.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those things that was like a school talent contest. So that's the first time I ever played drums, which were the rubbish bins or the waste bins, you know, for the school. But we were all painted up like all the characters out of Kiss, you know, and that was just so funny, miming to a record. Yeah, that was probably my first kind of in a band kind of moment. And then after that, it was always just instruments by myself that I'd pick up along the way and do things until in my teen years or at school. We used to do a lot of jamming. But yeah, cover bands in the teenage years. And then I suppose I really kind of started with Deck and Dance. First time I played with Deck and Dance, I was still in school. I was 14 years of age, or late 13. And I came to play tambourine. I think it was at the Brixton Academy or something like that in London. So I had to leave school early for that. And that was good crack. And then after that, I started playing with them. It was the early 80s anyway.
Yeah.
But 17 years
you
of
say
age.
the first gig would have been in the early 80s, or yeah.
Yeah, what's the early 80s? Well, I would have been almost 14 years of
15
age.
years. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just can't quite remember. That must have been 82 or 3 or something like that. And then I started touring around with them in about 87. And that was typical European tours on buses and that kind of crack. But it was always good. I always enjoyed finishing school, jump on the bus, drive around to the Isle of Dogs where they would be rehearsing. And
that's right.
Just soak it all up. Just constantly soak it all up.
Yeah.
I loved it. Loved every bit of it. Yeah.
I think you must be familiar with the book that Peter Ulrich and the Brighton.
I haven't.
Right?
It's
I need
probably
to
a
talk. I
disgrace.
need to talk to Peter to send you a copy. I interviewed him 3 times. He told all the stories, man.
Yeah. Pete, I haven't read the book. It's a disgrace, but I should get round to it. He was brilliant. Pete was fantastic.
Yeah.
He's just solid, an absolutely solid guy. And while everybody else was getting dramatic and exploding, he always kept his cool and kept everything together. Yeah.
You know, Peter's a very nice, very good human being. He's the type of guy that may be an earthquake, a fire, and the guy will keep it cool. You know, Some
Yeah,
people manage it. People will be arguing and screaming on the buses lane or the
yeah,
crowd, whatever.
yeah.
And then then Peter
Oh,
will be there,
totally, totally,
the
totally. But
master
he
of
was, I think,
ceremony.
he was also he. I think he also he started a family earlier than anybody as
That's
well.
right. Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
kind of, I suppose, that adds to your responsibilities and your
Mhm.
context maybe or something. But yeah, no, he's such a lovely guy.
Mhm.
So it's lovely when I get to see him. We always
Yeah.
have a good knowing kind of laugh and smile with each other. We don't actually have to say that much because
Really.
that's a special person, you know. That's a
Absolutely,
special
man.
person.
Currently, you are the musical composer director of the Town Hall Cabane at the
Yeah,
Onso
that's
Theater
a
Company. Feel free to
that's a
elaborate.
that's an old CV. That's the
Yeah.
CV that I'd send around for doing applications for arts
Uh,
grants or things like that. But yeah, that was prior to 2017, actually.
yeah.
So that kind of started, I suppose, just working with everybody in Cavan, really. A lot of really good, interesting, talented people. And I think the town hall was such an interesting old building. It was starting to fall into disrepair. And so the council allowed a group of artists really to kind of, take it over, do things in it, put on productions, that kind of thing. And that went for a good number of years. And that was absolutely fabulous. There was so much talent there. And yeah, so much talent there. And so I ended up basically collaborating. We all collaborated and collaborating with ideas and kind of taking charge with the musical direction of things as well. So with Philip Doherty, who was writing a lot of the plays, we would collaborate on ideas and I would write the scores for whatever productions we were doing, which was pretty fast paced because everything was done on a low budget too. And sometimes that's always the best for creativity. And so everything was done on the hoof, very quickly, on the fly, improvised. And I would land with all the instruments that I'd have around me, from percussion to strings to wind. And it was as if I had already written the things before
Really?
because of
Wow.
what was expected. And it would be a case of like we're rehearsing this particular part of the script. I need this. Boom. You just pull it out of your head because
Wow.
and that's probably a lot of that's to do with the experience of listening to so many different genres of music. And you need to enjoy them as well, I think, to really do them justice. And to pull stuff out quickly and do that, then the next big problem was remembering what you had done because it was improvised. So that was suddenly concrete, and you'd have to keep track of everything that was going on for consistency. But so that was just that was quite a really interesting period of creativity those years, and that was kind of for me that was 2014 to 2017 really.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's yeah. A lot of people now, most of those people have all split and gone to different parts of the country, doing different things. A lot of people are still around, but then the council basically got the money to do up the town hall, and then it became another thing. It wasn't so much a community space anymore. It became a normal kind of a theater and gallery kind of place. And so that magic was kind of squeezed out of it because it's a bit like that Joni Mitchell kind of song about the taxi and the parking side, the parking space. People don't realize the magic because when sometimes these things happen, people take it for granted. That's what it's all about. But a lot of that stuff needs maintenance and encouragement and funding, to be honest, because everything we did was on a budget, but it was high creativity. And now it's a kind of a normal space where they put typical plays on, and you know, et cetera, et cetera. And so it doesn't have that ballsy kind of element that it used to have. You know, that's important, I think, for everybody to recognize. When something is really, really good, happening in the middle of nowhere, wherever it is, it's not something that happens all the time, and it has to be looked after, really, and appreciated. But it's like anything. For a time, something exists, and then it goes somewhere else, and you look for it. You know, you always travel around and look for it. So that was really, really good. I enjoyed all of that, and out of that, then Philip had a film, Redemption of a Rogue, that he put together quite quickly, and then so the beginning of COVID was spent writing the soundtrack for that, which was pretty exciting stuff, as there wasn't a whole pile going on in COVID. That's how I started COVID for me, anyway.
Good for you, man. Good for you.
Yeah.
And this year, I think you ended up participating in the Clones Film Festival with Rita.
Yeah.
It was a performance of a live
that
score for public screen Nosferatu. Wow.
Yeah, with my daughter, Rita.
Yeah.
Yes. She's really interesting. She's an amazing singer. She's a beautiful guitarist, and and incidentally, she's a music therapist now. That she's studied in University of Limerick for 2 years and did a master's in music therapy. So she's continuing that whole tradition in our family, at least. But as a musical performer and writer, she's really, really talented. So we've had that for a while, the Clonus Film Festival, and Nosferatu was a choice to do this year, and it was great. And we just put the music together in a couple of weeks, really, working at that. And Clonus is a very small town in Monaghan, and it's just got a really good collective of artists and people that really love film. And we had done something 2 years before that with another formation, APO 33, and it went down a treat. So it was a no-brainer to do something for it this year. So I think myself and my daughter will continue doing a lot of collaborative stuff together, but definitely scores for films, silent films. It's a lot of fun because you can do anything you want, really. We weren't really looking at traditional scores that may have been done before. It was a lot more electronic in nature, as well as being percussive as well, you know? Yeah.
Is there a recording of that, or somebody taped that, or is in YouTube, or
I have a recording of it somewhere. No, I have a recording of it.
Oh, good for you.
It's so funny. It's like all the stuff that I did really in the town hall. Everything's written, everything's performed, things are recorded as you're rehearsing things. But for whatever reason, when it comes to filming or recording, it doesn't go down that way. It's like you spend your time getting everything ready, and then that one thing for posterity just seems to be elusive. And so a lot of the stuff I've done has been in the moment. You know, it's just, I can't be doing that. Somebody else has to do that.
Of course, you need to concentrate in the music and playing, somebody else doing the recording, obviously, right?
Yeah. But then again, for that to be released as something, and it's probably worth doing, it means we have to start again and record for the listener. And it doesn't always work that way. It's something that works in the moment for a projection. But when you have to put something together for somebody who's listening without the film itself, then you're missing the context. So, and I think so much about music has to have context. or certain types of music, you know, because sometimes with things like Nosferatu, there was like a lot of tongue in cheek kind of humor in there that if you're not familiar with the film, you're not necessarily, you're going to say, what the hell are these guys up to?
That's
Kind
right.
of thing, you know? But there you go.
In general, Robbie, what's the creative process with you? Whether when you were part of, I don't know, Dead Can Dance or the writing film score or working with the other people that you have worked you, how music come to you? I mean, you wake up in the morning every day and you are writing stuff down. You going for a walk and ideas come to your head and you record it. You play a little bit on the piano in your cell phone. And how the music come to you? As opposed to
Yeah,
you
yeah.
don't you're a creative person, so you don't go to your office and say
No,
today I want to write the best piece of
no,
music in the history of the world, right? So
no, I don't, you know. Uh, it's a really good question. Um, I don't know. It's like I have in my head, there's something running the whole time.
mm,
Imaginary music. Although it's there, for me, it's real and it's physical because it's in my imagination. But so I can pick up. I'm not as disciplined as I should be, but I can pick up an instrument or anything that I could physically get around
yeah.
and pull something out because it's not about replicating. It's about searching for something and it's about a sound or a tone. And if you can find that, then it's a question of pushing expression. So you need imagination to create expression. Otherwise, you have nothing to say. And so when you start pulling that out, it leads to the next thing. And then whether you turn it into a song or compose, that's another thing. But to actually pick up something and just, it's to be, I suppose, I don't know. Some people might say, you know, you draw your inspiration from a beautiful morning. You might put you in the mood, but I don't think the notes are necessarily like floating around the trees. You know, that kind of thing. It's something that puts you in the mood to sit down and do something. But the music is either it's got to be within you to extract. But another way of looking at it as well is that it's like a river above your head that's constantly flowing, and you dip into it. At any point you dip into it, it's something that would have gone past you otherwise. So you dip into it and there it is. And you extract from it and you create something out of it. But I suppose in a way I'm trying to say that there isn't really anything, there's nothing really original. I don't think it's a bad thing to say that because a lot of people get, termed as being a genius or this, that, and the other. And I think it's a dangerous thing to say that because if you know the process, I think you understand that it's not so difficult. It's a question of just going, is that what you naturally do? And you dip into it and you make something of it. But by the statement of nothing's original, I just mean there's a constant recycling. There's a constant flow of music in the universe that just keeps going around and around because everything in the universe is constantly contributing all the time. So how could you not find something? It has to be there. So, you could take a spiritual side of that, another worldly side of that if you want. For me, it's just a very natural thing. There it is. And bang, you assume the position, you assume the character, you assume the role to sort of extract that thing and express it. And bang, it happens. It just happens, I think the danger and difficulty is when you try to make something, you try to edit something before it comes out sometimes, or through other people's expectations, they put restrictions on your creativity, and you do that yourself. It's not necessarily other people doing that to you, but you'll do that with your own creativity. It's a whole lot easier when you don't have those pressures, so.
Sometimes you have the pressure for record labels, right? Hey, we want a hit, we want your band, whatever band happened to be, to sound like this, to sound like that, you know. And in the example of Dead Can Dance, you know, Brendan and Lisa's music is very different from anything else. So they couldn't conform to pop or rock or.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't get the beginning of that question.
No, I'm saying that sometimes you get the pressure for record labels, right?
Oh, yes. Yes.
To be, well, we would like you to sound like this or to sound like that, or you
Yeah.
know, or,
Uh,
or
I, I think it was very, very fortunate for them and other people in the same position
sure.
where the right person at the right time.
Mhm.
Because I think Ivor Watts was pretty cool at that time, and he went with something he heard and signed them up, et cetera, and the rest is history. But he allows that to happen. Whereas other people hasn't maybe been as fortunate, or you know, I hear of bands that make the most beautiful music, and then you hear they didn't like doing that because they were pressured to do that.
That's right. That's right.
Oh my God, what a shame. So the same thing means different things to different people, always, you know. But no, I
Mhm.
think Decadence were very lucky to be able to follow their own path.
Absolutely,
Uh,
man.
and they're creative giants, Brendan and Lisa, in that sense. They I think they still had, you know, uh, they had probably other things that helped shape, you know, what they produced as well, not just the
Mhm.
label saying, oh, you got to do this or that. I mean, they had it easy that way, I guess, but there are other things that shape your music. I mean, resistance is there to shape things. It's how
Yeah.
you get around it. You can't
Yeah.
obliterate it. You've got to shape the thing you're doing. And so it's quite possible the thing that we appreciate with music is is that shaping process, not the core sound. You
Mhm.
know, it's that shaping process, and that shaping comes from resistance and issues. And how do you get around this? How do you get around that? You know, they're the solutions. We hear the solutions, even, you know.
Mhm.
But then again, there's a whole other side of music which is really free and liberating as well. And that's experimental music. And I have a lot of time for experimental music that doesn't use any formulas. And it's about just, it's like some sort of science or something, you know, it's a tone
Mhm.
that breaks up and does wondrous things, or minimalism, at least, you know,
Yeah.
just somewhere in between. And that resonates a lot with me as well because I'm fascinated with sound. It's not just music;
Mhm.
it's actual sound. Is absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, good for you, man. Now we're talking a little bit of Dead Can Dance. In 20, I'm picking a different thing for your CV here.
Yeah.
In 2022, you were part of the Dead Can Dance European tour. Feel free to elaborate what's the process, or going from city to city, taking a bus, waking up in the morning. How
Ah.
difficult is it, man? Sometimes you get, you know, a bad night's sleep and you need to, you know, get coffee in the morning, catch a bus, catch a fly, and then do your best at between 8 and
Well,
10 p.m. Have a couple of
considering.
beers, go to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning, catch the bus in the morning again.
Oh
It's
my
a
God.
lot of work. It's very difficult. People don't realize that,
Well,
you know.
my hat comes off to the road manager in that situation because they
Yeah,
have to basically round up a bunch of kids, and
exactly.
in in that case, they've got, you know, including the road crew, who are way much more disciplined in general than the bands usually are. They've got, you know, 20 people to corral, or in the middle of the night when you're traveling between. I'm trying to think now, Bulgaria and somewhere else. You know,
Yeah,
the next is 3 o'clock in the morning. Everybody has to get out and line up in their dressing gowns, and somebody doesn't have their passport, and it's, you know, it's a team effort, and you need to know. You need to know what time you're getting off the bus. You need to know what time you're getting on the bus, and
yeah,
and I have to say it's endlessly. It's so much different, so much more different than it was in the early days because Peter was the tour manager in the early
yeah,
days. And so he had a lot of responsibilities. But it's also a lot more complex now, traveling in these days too.
mm,
So yeah, you do need your wits about you. You've got to work as a team. You can't be delaying things. But to be honest, look, in the context of the world and where we are, I mean, I have no time for anybody that complains about not getting a coffee. Oh,
That's right. Yeah.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
if you get on the bus, you're lucky. Just get on the friggin' bus and get to the next stop. Don't be complaining about anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, life on the road, it's a funny one. Jules said to me something funny that he had read from one of the Rolling Stones. One of the guys in the Rolling Stones was asked, it could have been Keith Richards, I guess, was asked, what did you think about, touring life? And I think the response was like, it's 2 hours playing and then 22 hours sitting around doing nothing kind of thing, So
Yeah.
if so when you leave home for a couple of months, you're only doing 2 hours a night, for 2 or 3, I suppose, most of the week anyway, or half of the week, I guess. But it's what you do with the rest of the time. And it's a difficult one to be productive in that time. It's hard to take your mind off it. You're kind of in a strange state of, I won't say conflict, but there's a low-level tension because of the expectation of what you're doing and where you need to be. And even though there's time to relax and do all those things, it's not really chaotic, but you're there to do a job. So some people do it really well. They arrive to a place and they run off and visit all the sites and do all of that, and they make it back in time for a sound check and da, 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 da. I do find it hard to fucking do a load of stuff. So you do end up spending a lot of time, not sitting around, but because you're laughing and joking, really, and you have to have camaraderie. I mean, that's what a band is. It keeps itself going and ticking when it's not on stage. So you've got to have that. And there was great camaraderie amongst the amongst the musicians.
Yeah.
That can dance, So, but it was exciting. Yeah, it was exciting. I mean, it always is. Bouncing off the back of the previous tour. And then we had like 3 cancelled tours because of COVID in between 2019 and 2022.
Yeah.
So we were also really excited to finally be back and doing it. But there is there's a great joy out of playing, I suppose, up in that level of things and that level of concerts, the kind of upper hall type places, and you can never believe it when you get to one and you see how beautiful it is, and it's like blows your mind. And then the next one's even more beautiful, and so on and so forth. But one of the things that I really enjoyed was that we did a lot of Eastern European countries. And that's a whole other universe in itself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That was quite an eye-opener. And fabulous people. I mean, that's the thing. You're meeting fabulous people everywhere. And I think that's important. It's like travel, really. It just reinforces your positive view of the world,
Yeah. No, absolutely. When you're a touring musician, for example, playing in, I don't know, cities with high income like Madrid, Spain, or Paris, or London, it's very difficult to go to Eastern European country where the income per capita is much lower and people pay, I don't know, 20, 30 pounds or dollars or a concert. People need to work like a week to earn 45 pounds. So they really enjoy it.
Yeah, they do. And that you start hearing, when you hear that stuff, I mean, like the cost of I'm not usually one when I go and see a band to buy paraphernalia, T-shirts and records. I'll buy them somewhere. But unless there's somebody that really blows my mind, I got to have something. It's nice to remember the event. Yeah. But I am surprised at the price of merchandise. And yes, when you're going into a poorer country, people are struggling to do that. But I don't have a whole pile of influence or anything to do with that. It's almost like that whole merchandise is a machine in itself and a whole other business. Somebody signs somebody up to do something, and then that thing happens.
Yeah.
But it is a thing that everybody's doing, and it's a big money maker. It's a big money maker for bands, and that's the and that's what it is now. Playing live music really is the way to survive, I think. It has
Yeah.
it has a bizarre kind of consequence that it's actually good in a way that maybe I'm not sure now. Recorded music sales, Spotify is an awful machine, and it's so anti-music, and then it's like that forces you to do what everybody did in ancient times. You got to strap on your instrument and you've got to play,
Yeah.
and I think the world is better for it, for live music.
Yeah, but if you think about it, right? So a new album, right? Whatever band, it costs, I don't know, $100,000 to record, to produce, hire an engineer. Okay, how we recover that investment? Fewer and fewer
Yeah,
people in the world are buying CDs and vinyl or Spotify. You need to have like a million hits to get a $10, check. So
yeah,
one way to recover that investment, the band need to tour, and
yeah,
tour is expensive. So the merchandise section, well, we need to sell on average, $3,000 a night in merchandise between pictures, CDs, and sign stuff.
yeah,
To in order to
yeah,
end up recover that investment that you put in my hypothetical example of $100,000. So
yeah, yeah.
it's they need to do it.
Yeah, you got to do it. You got to do it,
Yeah.
and it's been done, and people are doing it. So it's the thing. Yeah, I never really focused much on it or had much to do with it, but yeah, I realize. Yeah, it's a very necessary part of it all. It's not like it's a new thing either. It's something that's always been there. But I think in the latter years, there's definitely well, everything's commodified with much more intensity now,
Yeah.
and so it has a higher place than it used to, I think.
Mm.
And everybody wants a piece of something. Everybody wants a piece of something.
That's right. In 2021, you end up working with the Suitcase Orchestra, a
Oh yeah,
live interactive installation commissioned by a couple of people. What the name just bring my call my attention. The Suitcase Orchestra.
I know.
Feel
I
free to
I
elaborate
had
on
a
what it was.
I had a project in 2000 and I can't remember, it was 16 or 17 there. It was called the I was going to say the Abandoned Orchestra, but it was the what do they call it? It's down. Anyway, it was an orchestra of the automated orchestra,
Yeah.
and so that was kind of like a culmination and all the stuff I'd done over the years, working with electronics and recycled materials. And so the orchestra, the Suitcase Orchestra, was one avenue of all of that, which got very complex. But I'll just explain the rest of it first. Was that with the whole PhD thing in music and autism, and trying to create instruments, electronic instruments that use sensors, just to pull down that physical barrier with things, I kind of added to that and made a lot of physically playable instruments via MIDI. So I was using solenoids and servos and other lovely goodies from the sweet shop to sort of play all the instruments, the physical ones that I had built. And that was done through microprocessors and Arduinos and things like that, which are programmable. And I love all that kind of thing. So I ended up with, which was an installation in the town hall, which, so I had a tree in the garden that I removed, and I brought it for the centerpiece for this exhibition because the town hall was a very, very large room. And up in that tree, I had a Bowron, which was like the moon, and that had solenoids in that playing the Bowron, and around that I had various garden implements, spades, shovels, cymbals, drums, and other guitars, and some of those were played bowed instruments as well, and they're made from printers. So many, and this is where I'd go to the junkyard and bring home all the printers that I could to just pull out all the tracking pieces that you could easily program then to sweep across the strings by replacing parts with, say, the bow, programming that in with the Arduino, and then putting it into MIDI, and then creating pieces on a keyboard, and then having that loop And there's something really interesting in this that I never thought about before. As the entire orchestra, such automated orchestra, was playing, there was this lovely beauty between sequenced music and naturalness of playing. It's a funny thing because everything was in time, in its place, but because of the interface between receiving the MIDI message, making something mechanical like a solenoid or a servo move, there's some give, there's some discrepancy in there, as if it was a human. And so that combined, but with the every bar repeats at a certain time and all of that, and this lovely discrepancy in the mechanical build of it, just produced this, I don't know, this sensation I'd never even had before listening to music. So if you had if you had machines that were way tighter and more specific, not specific, precise, it would have a totally different outcome. But MIDI music, playing mechanical music instruments in this fashion, just created this built-in human element. So it had an entity of its own, and I just loved every aspect of that. And then we had the dry ice coming in there, and the lights from above, and it was like a soundtrack. Then soundtrack to a train passing through Transylvania at night time. It just so good. It gave me the idea. Then I should do a lot more with that, and then have a whole projector synced to that. So I've got some of those ideas. Whether I get around to doing them or not is another story. But the Suitcase Orchestra, sorry to come back to your question, was just a further point along the track with that, and it allowed me to create basically a traveling suitcase. Opened up, and inside there were little dolls, xylophones, little tape recorders, all sorts of manner of objects that were remotely played as well, electro-mechanical, and once again synced up to a microprocessor receiving MIDI notes. And this is where it's different. It was hooked up to the internet, so we created a web page where you could type in something type into a bubble, poetry, anything you wanted, and the orchestra would play something according to what was typed in. So it was just using an algorithm that I'd programmed into it, and that meant that you could go online, you could see through the video cam the orchestra lit up in a suitcase, type something in, press send, and then there's a delay of a few seconds, and away it would play something original according to what you had typed in,
Yeah.
And that was nice. That was nice because when I was studying my PhD, I always thought it would be a lovely thing to make bespoke instruments is the thing really for me, and to make something that was particular to two people. So two people at any place in the world could have their own instrument on a wall, and each person could type and send a message to the other, musical, and at any point that instrument would play on the wall, just to make a connection between two people or more if you wanted it. And I thought, obviously it's not an efficient way of communicating, but that's not the point here. The point is to make something unique and bespoke that has a different value to those people using it, a way of communicating. And so the orchestra was really pulled from that original idea. Yeah.
In 2019, you were part again of the Dead Can Dance European tour.
Yeah.
What memory do you have from that one?
Memories, lots of memories.
Or anecdote or something funny or whatever you want to share with us.
Anecdotes, rock and roll stories.
Right.
Anecdotes. Well, for me, it was good because it was years since I'd played with Dead Can Dance, so that was a big deal.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that immensely. Anecdotes. I don't know. I think it's just more. there's nothing of any particular kind of craziness. Oh, well, there's actually one funny thing that did happen. We were leaving, geez, was it this one or was it 22? Now I can't remember. I think it was 2019. But, you know, and this goes back to how do things roll and the road manager being important and everything else. And, of course, there was a communique that said, right, you got to be out of the hotel at whenever it was, I can't remember, 9:20 or something there. And the bus leaves at 25 past or something like that. The bus decides to leave 5 minutes early. And I'm on time. And I just watch the bus take off. And I'm thinking at that point, as it didn't look like it was going to stop, I'm thinking, I don't know where I am exactly. I certainly don't know the name of the venue because I haven't looked at it in advance, you know. And how the hell am I going to get to wherever it is I'm supposed to be going? Eventually the bus stops and then I get on. And, you know, it's funny. You know, it's funny, but it could easily go the wrong way. And then it reminded, because the funny thing about it for me was that it happened before, like a long time ago, back in the early 80s. And the bus that we were traveling on was a double-decker, and coming into Amsterdam, I think it was, no, it was Utrecht. And the bus wouldn't pass under the bridge. So the bus driver had to turn around, find an alternative route to get to the venue. And so 3 or 4 of us jumped off the bus and went into a local shop to buy whatever. And I just happened to have this fascination for doubly salted Dutch licorice. So I ended up buying a couple of packets. The last person leaves, and I'm just going through the checkout. They jump on the bus. I come out of the shop, and the bus takes off down the street. And once again, I'm not really sure where I am or even the name of the venue. And up to this point, the roll call used to be, is everybody on the bus? Everybody would shout, yeah, and the bus would take off.
That's right.
Except for me. So I'm running up the road, chasing after this bus. And the bus stops at the lights. Nobody knows I'm missing, so nobody's looking for me. And then the bus takes off again. And so anyway, I come across a couple of people on bikes. I asked them what's the directions to the city center, guessing the gig's going to be somewhere around the center. And they give me directions, and off I go. And I have it in my head, right, I'll just walk into a newsagent's, look for a music magazine, see where the gig is and all of that. And I did. Found a magazine with Brendan and Lisa on the front of it, explained my story, and the guy laughed, and then he sent me on into town. And the fucking worst thing about it was that I get into the gig, and nobody knew I was missing off the bus.
Oh my God, man. And that was
it?
before the internet, before cell phone
Yeah.
that you could call someone.
Oh,
yeah.
completely. I mean, imagine if it happened leaving a city, going to another city, you know.
Yeah.
Another thing altogether. But so that's what happened to me in 2019, a little remnant of something that happened 20, 30 years before. But funny all the same. Still funny, though.
Yeah. In 2018, you were commissioned to write music and for another film called Tongue. I think you did it.
Yeah.
You wrote that and directed that. Feel free to.
Yeah, with my partner Nuria. She's a director of photography. She's from Barcelona. She's fantastic. So that was a commission from the county council for a short film. And that idea was really to sort of, because where we are here in Cavan, we're on the border with the north. And so there's a whole other culture around the border counties. I suppose it's like a subculture as such. But because it's a mixture of north and south, and that's a complex thing over the history of Ireland, kind of thing. But it's its own communities there, and what I love about it is the different blends of music and attitudes as well.
Yeah, I lost you for a minute.
Create something that.
Go ahead.
Okay, cool. So the idea with Tongue was to create a short film involving musicians from both sides of the border. But it just has a much more universal kind of reach, really. but we need a border as such for it to work. So, and here beside Cavan, like we're on the border with the north, and of course, you know, it's not something you physically necessarily see, though you can see all the appearances of how the road markings change, et cetera, and other things. So you know when you're going from the south into the north. But when you're on the waterways, it's less obvious because there are no borders really at the end of the day. They're ridiculous things. And so the film was about that travel across water and picking up musicians along the way that would come with us. And then we ended up on Loch Uta, and there's O'Reilly's Castle there in the middle of that on a small island. And the film culminated in a musical performance amongst ourselves for that. But it's not a scripted. It wasn't so scripted. It was a funny idea in the head. You often have these ideas in your head. As soon as you actually go to do them, you realize, oh, there's a huge gap between what you thought and what you can do or you're going to do or even explain to somebody else. And that mostly was all improvised on the day, which was, I don't know, it's something that I always end up doing at the end of the day is mostly improvising. So we ran around and we filmed that and played and took boat journeys along the waterways. But tongue is the language of music. You know, it's that universal language. So that's why we called it tongue, really, you know. It's the one thing we did without speaking to each other.
Yep, yeah. That's cool. In '95, you end up touring with Lisa. Lisa, of course, that can dance and you know, feel free to what you remember.
Yeah,
and feel free that you know go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, that's kind of cool because, like we were saying earlier, it was so the best way to start is probably rehearsal. So when Lisa came back from Australia, and that was in '95, she had already recorded an album, the Mirapool, I think it was, and so she had X amount of songs for that. And yeah, we rehearsed all those songs in the church. But myself and Lisa, we also wrote about 5 pieces, I think, and they're all varied as well in style too. And we played those live, which was fantastic. So it wasn't just the album that she was promoting. And that's what I'm interested now in putting together with her next year, because I think that's going to be very worthwhile. So a lot of my memories are actually waking up, having coffee, and putting on the recorder and going through songs, writing stuff together. And with Lisa, it's a very interesting process. It's an easy process, and it's a very natural process. And it's exciting as well, and which gives you a lot of energy to constantly make more things and continue. So the day, and then we'd get together with the band, and then we would rehearse all the songs then together. So for me, that was a split between writing stuff together and then rehearsing the album for the tour. And I think as well, back in those days, because after that tour was the Deck and Dance tour in '96, and that was Spirit Chaser. Yeah, and that was fantastic. That was absolutely fantastic. But there's something about that period. It was a great summer as well. But there was a different feeling, I think, in the air. Everybody was a lot more kind of hippie-ish, really, and very relaxed and easygoing. That's what I draw from that '95, '96 period. After that, things are kind of very different. But and Deck and Dance's lineup changed there. So for me on the Lisa tour, that's what it was. It was very, very loose, and we just enjoyed hanging out, really, and traveling.
Good for you, man. Good for you. Yeah. Hopefully you will be able to, the two of you, release the material that you mentioned, you know.
So we're always talking about it, but, you know, one thing leads to another, and you never kind of do. But it was nice being off, asked or invited to do this
Yeah.
thing with Marcello. So
Yeah.
yeah, and Lisa's very good. She's very, very good.
Yeah.
She's very, very good, and she has a very unique way of working, which is, yeah, yeah. Couldn't say enough good things about that lady.
I'm with you. Yeah. I'm becoming a very good friend with Marcello, and we talk about the people that he's invited to that particular record with Lisa, yourself, and other great musicians out there. I I I have heard a little bit of the composition and the process that Marcello goes um, to put all the pieces for different people, and it's going to be a very 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 good album for what I heard, man.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's good. I haven't heard a scratch. Only the rough kind of demo thing that was sent to me,
Yeah,
and I just know there's a whole pile of other production that goes with that, of course.
yeah,
So it'll be completely different from what I heard, and
yeah,
I'll be looking forward to that definitely.
yeah. I'm quite sure. I'm quite sure. And a lot of people in general terms have asked me, what do you think is the future of Dead Can Dance, as far as you can, as far as you know, as
Oh,
far as you feel any
well,
possibility for them
I
to
don't.
write
Yeah,
together, tour together? Because I know that
yeah,
Brendan is re-releasing, uh, some of the old albums that he had, and I think a remaster and maybe working new material. And Lisa, of course, touring with Dead Can Dance. I mean, I'm sorry, with Hans Zimmer, play with other people. Is there any
yeah,
possibility in general terms, without?
yeah. I don't know. It's one of those things. It's really best to ask.
Damn.
Um, really
I
best
don't
to
want you to
ask.
get in trouble.
Well, I mean, I could say a lot of stuff, but
No, no,
that's
no.
not really my place to be saying it. And
Sure, of course.
everything has its
Mhm.
natural time. You know, it's very easy to say. It could, on one hand, you could say, "Oh, that's never going to happen again."
Yeah,
But you also know there's that. What's that famous James Bond line? Never say never, or name of that film anyway.
that's right. Yeah,
Never say
yeah.
never again. I mean, because it's been said many times before that won't happen again, and it has.
Mhm.
So, because everything constantly changes, and
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't know. You've just got to do the things that actually feel good and
No,
natural and
absolutely.
inspire you,
You know,
and just you know, it.
it's
I think it was hard for them. It can be hard for them,
yeah,
um,
absolutely.
and that's why things are the way they are. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's easy for me to say, hey, where's the new album coming up and where's the new tour? And
yeah,
people evolve in time. Lisa and Brendan
yeah.
live in different countries, well, different continents altogether to begin with, and then and
Yeah, well, that's the way they always did it, though. I mean,
yeah,
Brendan never went to Australia to record. Lisa
yeah,
always had to come here, So
yeah,
I mean, and she did it, But but it's tough. I think it's tough, and you kind of have to give them that space, really.
absolutely,
Um,
man. Yep.
yeah, 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 yeah. Not giving anything away.
What are you working on nowadays, man?
Um, right now, well, the last thing I did was the Clonus Film Festival, so that's nice.
Yep.
Working with my daughter is really interesting.
Really?
Uh, yeah, really, really interesting because it's working with somebody but you know them musically as well, So that's kind of has that extra added bonus, and
Yeah.
we had to work really hard um, for the soundtrack. And we just found it was really interesting and easy to come up with lots of ideas. And so over COVID as well, the interesting thing is, the pedal mania, I think, hit a lot of people. And so I've been exploring a lot of boutique pedals and sounds because I do like sound at the end of the day. And she's very excited to get into pedals and things. So she's exploring that, and she's put an EP together. She's still working on that herself. And so I'm helping her do that with percussion and sounds. And I just love to keep working with her, really. I think it's fantastic. But she's exploring things and I'm exploring things, and I think we'll push that further. But it's like anything else, you have to have a number of things going, I think,
Yeah.
just to explore all the avenues and satisfy your needs, really, you know.
Hmm.
But yeah, finding people to work with, that you can work with. You can't take it for granted. You can't take it for granted, you know. So
Yeah.
people when you find them. It's my advice.
Yeah, I'm happy that you're working with Marcello and Lisa, and then hopefully you will be releasing that material with Lisa from 1995 or so. And
I
but
know.
people, of course I'm biased, right? I really love that Dance, and all of you that have participated were being, Peter and David, Lisa, Brendan, Astrid, Jules, yourself,
Yeah,
and it's a great band. Have given so much satisfaction to many people all over the world, and
yeah,
um, maybe one day we'll see them, or if not, buy the music and buy the CDs, or it's a great music, man. I'm very happy that Brendan and Lisa took the risk, put the band together some years ago, and people don't know at the beginning when they arrived in London in the
yeah,
Isle of Dog. Peter Woolrich was telling me that they were very, very poor. They
yeah.
didn't have a place to crash at the beginning or food to eat at the end of every day. So people
I know.
think that
I know.
the life of rock stars or so are making billions or this or that. That is not the case.
No, 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 no. I mean, we were all running around
Very
each
poor,
other,
man.
scrounging off each other, and living out of each other's pockets and all that sort of crack.
Yeah,
But there you go. That was the thing that Brendan and Lisa were very, very focused and determined,
that's good, man.
and
Yeah,
they made it all the way through. They made it all the way through, and there's a lot to be said for that. To follow something through, just follow it through, whatever it is. Just keep it going and make it go all the way through, and you'll be in a different place than you were when you started. That's for sure.
yeah. Unfortunately, sometimes, Robbie, people give up too easily. Whether you are a painter, a musician, or a mechanic, or whatever your profession, it doesn't work the first time, the second time. Hey,
I know.
I'm not
Well,
going to do this. I want to go back to school or get a day
I
job or
know.
whatever. But at the
I,
end, you need to follow your inner
you do.
strengths and whatever is appealing to you, right?
Yeah. Look, there's nothing wrong with giving up and going and working in the corner shop.
Mm,
There just isn't. Sometimes it's easier to
mm,
do the thing you love and keep it away from a
mm,
living and make your money in some other fashion. There's so
mm,
many fantastic musicians that aren't professional out there in the
mm.
world. But as people do say, if you, it's the objectives, what your objectives are. Not everybody can be on everybody's mind at the same time.
Yeah,
So what you can do is, and your objectives generally, if you're an artist and such, is that you're doing it because you're propelled to do it. You cannot. It's an affliction. Creativity is an affliction. It's not something you can really turn off unless you damage something, and you have to produce it and you do it. And as long as you're doing it, it doesn't matter what your day job is. I mean, if you can make some money out of it and make a living, then all the better. But as soon
uh,
as you stop enjoying making your music, then something's wrong. So you have
absolutely.
to, so you've got to do it. You've got to have the objectives, and you've got to do it. So to give up, what does that really mean? To give up,
Mm.
yeah, you know, you just don't try not to be jaded in what you do. Do it because you're interested, not because you want to. I mean, it's sensitive advice, really. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
it's sensitive advice. You kind of have to find out for yourself in some ways. Just do. Yeah.
Absolutely. Hey, Robbie, man, we've been talking to an hour. I'm quite sure we'll do a part two of this interview soon. It was very nice talking to you. You are a great guy. You have been
Oh,
part of one of the best band in the history of music. You
that's
are,
very, very
finishing your
privileged.
PhD. You work with a lot of kids with special needs. You're doing something good in the world, man. Besides the
Yeah, well,
music, besides the money, and besides the electronic and creating music, writing film scores, working
yeah.
nowadays with Lisa and Marcello. So you're doing well, man.
Okay, thank you very much, Claudia. That's really nice. That's really nice.
And hopefully I will make it to Ireland. We'll get together. I will take you out to dinner. And if you are
Oh,
here in
look,
Washington D.C., you're
yeah.
welcome to come here for dinner. You will have the best time of your life.
Well, equally, if you come here, you're welcome to stay here, and we will do some cooking.
You bet, man. Thank you very much, man. It was very
All
nice
right.
talking to you, Robbie. Have a great
You
afternoon
too,
then, there,
sir. You
man.
too, sir. Take care.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.